How does the RTX 4080 perform in Star Citizen? We're comparing it in this video to the 7900 XTX and also to the 3080, and so we're going to be able to answer really what the best option is for 4K, whether you should go AMD or Nvidia, and also if you've got a 3080, is it anywhere near worth upgrading, considering this graphics card cost a crazy amount of money. Let's get into some testing. The test setup is in the description below. All of this has been done on 3.17.4, the live patch, and you might be wondering why I'm even making this video. In the 7900 XTX video, I said I won't be buying a 4080. It's just too much money. I can't afford to buy two high-end graphics cards. But what's happened, if you watch the other hotspot video, is that my 7900 XTX was overheating, and so it didn't affect the results that I had, but when I turned my case upright, I found that it was just way too hot, and so I sent that back, got a refund, and thought, for science, we'll get a 4080 to see how they compare head to head for you guys, so you can know if you should get a 4080 or a 7900 XTX. The answer is probably neither, but we're here, and we're going to start off, as always, in Louisville with my Louisville testing. You'll see here at 4K, we actually have a bit of a lead for the 4080. And if you've been following these cards, they trade blows in lots of games. Some games, the 4080 faster, and some games, the 7900 XTX is faster. And as we start here with a GPU bottleneck scenario, everything, they're completely slammed at 4K, all three of these cards. We are seeing a slight lead for the Nvidia card. And as you can see there, a decent jump from the 3080 generationally. At 1440p, it's a tiny bit ahead, but effectively these are the same results, and the same is really true at 4K. If anything, they close a bit. Moving on to Corp, you'll see at 4K, again, the 4080 is a little bit ahead. The thing to remember with Area 18 though is that it is largely CPU bottleneck, so we're not really seeing the full potential of these cards in this scenario, and it's the same at 1440p and at 1080p. Nothing really to learn from these. Then as we move across to quantum travel, which again is a very bottleneck scenario for the GPU at 4K, you'll see a quite substantial lead here for the 4080, and this was more than I expected. And we've seen in the past that quantum travel is really brutal, and as we go into another part of the video, you'll see that there are strengths and weaknesses to these cards. In some scenarios, the 4080 has got an upper hand, and in one particular scenario, the 7900 XTX is faster. So this is interesting, and we are actually now really hitting 60 FPS at 4K everywhere with the 4080. If we move on to space, you'll see this at 4K is GPU bottlenecked. They're massive frames, and it doesn't really make much difference, but the 1% lows are actually a fair bit better on the 4080 than the 7900 XTX. One of the things to say with the AMD card is that they seem to have just rushed the card out on lots of levels, but the drivers are very kind of immature, let's say, and I would expect, as AMD normally does, they would develop these drivers and they'll get better and better over time. I imagine the Nvidia drivers are probably about as good as they're going to get, because Nvidia, I think they've just got much more money and bigger team to actually work on these things, so that when they release, they're running really well. But I would imagine things like 1% lows and just general performance may improve with the AMD cards, but you don't really want to buy it hoping that will happen. Let's move on to the Horizon Clouds, which is really good testing and really can push these GPUs. First of all, we're looking at this graph, which is the clouds at medium, and the medium clouds at 4K don't really hurt the 4080 and the 7900 XTX. The 3080 is there bottlenecked by the GPU, but in both those other scenarios we are CPU bottlenecked. Now, why is the 4080 slightly ahead here? It could just be the servers were slightly lighter that day. That's not kind of what I saw, but it could also be that these Nvidia cards are somehow slightly lighter on the CPU than the 7900 XTX, which means they get better performance. I don't know. It's not much of a difference, and I'm not going to read too much into that at this stage. Maybe that's something to keep exploring as we go. This next graph shows us the 3080 at medium, high and very high. We saw this last time. The 3080 absolutely cannot do very high clouds. 16 FPS is not good at all. But as we saw when we tested the 7900 XTX, it's much better. 33 at very high clouds, which, considering the jump from the 3080, that's good. And then as we look now at the 4080, you'll see it can't actually perform quite as well as the AMD card. So in terms of what I was saying before, the strengths and weaknesses, it seems as though for something like quantum travel, the 4080 can churn through that work more efficiently than the 7900 XTX, but the clouds on very high at 4K, which is about as demanding as you can get in gaming, I think. That's probably the most demanding test you can do. It seems as though the AMD card has the edge. And the thing with this is it's not particularly relevant, because I wouldn't really recommend anybody puts the clouds on very high in Star Citizen, especially not at 4K. So it's kind of irrelevant, but you can see there is brute kind of horsepower to the 7900 XTX. It is a fast card. And so we're left here with pretty similar thoughts to the 7900 XTX review. This is a 4K graphics card for Star Citizen. It performs slightly better than the AMD card at this stage. Whether that will change with driver support as time goes on, who knows, but we can't really speculate about that. For now, the 4080 actually in Star Citizen will beat the 7900 XTX. Whether that makes it a good buy for you, the same advice from me applies from the previous video. These are 4K cards, and if you're not running at 4K, there's no point getting them. I personally don't think this is a very good deal because it's such an expensive graphics card. I was fortunate enough to get my 3080 at MSRP, £650 in the UK. 2 years later, the 4080, which replaces it, is almost double, £1,200 in the UK here, and that is for both the Founders editions of both those models. The only thing that potentially means that these 4080s are slightly more appealing than the 7900 XTX is that obviously the kind of made by AMD reference models for that card have got all sorts of issues with the temperatures, and therefore people are buying the AIB models and the prices of those are going up and up. So actually the 7900 XTX isn't a great deal either. The 4090 starts to look more and more appealing because you're spending so much money on this that actually the 4090 performs a lot faster from everything I've seen than these cards. But if you're wanting to game at 4K, these are real options. And also we should mention the 7900 XT. They are 4K graphics cards, and if you are out there and you're wanting to play Star Citizen at 4K, which I think looks stunning, this is kind of what you've got to do. We could in theory talk about, and I have in the past talked about upscaling, so you in theory could run a slower card at 4040p and upscale to 4K. That might be a more reasonable option for a lot of people out there, but if you want an actual 4K graphics card, this 4080 is great. You should subscribe if you like this sort of technical look at Star Citizen. Please like this video, come to the Discord, talk to people over there who know all sorts of things about graphics cards, CPUs, everything, help you out with your Star Citizen PC build. Become a member, and that's probably everything. See you soon. Bye.